as you guys are shipping this ammunition to Afghanistan, you had a 747 cargo plane with 5 million rounds of AK-47 ammunition. And at one point, the plane actually got seized by the Russians.
Right. Yeah, so what happened there was we had a 747 cargo jet. It was about 100 tons of ammo, about $5 million worth. And it had to stop in the Kyrgyzstani Air Force Base. The U.S. Air Force had an Air Force base that they were renting from the country of Kyrgyzstan, which is right next to Afghanistan. And the jet had to land there to refuel. And when it landed there, we got a call from the shipping agent who had arranged the flight for us, and he said, "Hey, the Kyrgyzstani government is not letting the jet take off. They say you don't have the proper licenses." And we were like, "What are you talking about? We have all the licenses." I mean, the airline would not have taken off from Albania if we didn't. They always make sure you have the proper licenses before they leave. And he's like, "Well, I don't know what's going on. They're saying that you don't have the proper licenses and they're not letting the jet take off. And they want to charge us like, I think he said something like $500,000 a day in penalties for every day that we have the jet on the tarmac there." I'm like, "Well, that's insane because we have all the licenses. What are they talking about?" So I call up the defense attaché in the U.S. State Department in the embassy, the U.S. State Department embassy in Kyrgyzstan, and he's like the official who's part of the Pentagon, but they have one in every embassy. He's like the go-between between the State Department and the Pentagon. And so I asked the defense attaché, I'm like, "What's going on with this plane? We have all the licenses. They're saying we don't have a license." And he's like, "Okay, let me make some phone calls and I'll get back to you." He calls me up a few hours later and he's like, "Something really weird's going on." He's like, "Usually my all my contacts here are great. They always pick up the phone like immediately, but now they're giving me the cold shoulder. They're not like even answering my phone calls. I'm gonna have to do some more digging." A few days go by and he's like, "Yeah, they're just like ignoring me." And eventually they had to send Robert Gates, who was the Secretary of Defense, over to Kyrgyzstan to see what was going on. And it turned out that the Kyrgyzstanis, they were pretty much using our plane as a way to leverage the U.S. Air Force to pay more in rent for the Air Force base. They wanted to go from like $40 million a year to $80 million a year. And they eventually got it. The U.S. Air Force paid them, and then they released our plane.
Okay. So ultimately, the ammunition got to where it was supposed to go.
Yeah, it took a few weeks, but eventually they released it. Yeah.
Well, you guys ultimately, did you fulfill the whole contract?
No, so we ended up fulfilling. So what happened was about 2 months after Ephraim informed me he didn't want to pay me and I quit, I got a call from one of the secretaries at the office, and she told me that the feds had raided our office because from the investigation they opened up from the box guy, and there was also another competitor of ours who was saying untrue things about us that caused them to open up an investigation. So they raided the office and they pretty much confiscated all the documents, all the computers, and then they wanted to like interview me. They wanted to talk to me because I had not been working there for a while. My lawyer told me, he's like, "Well, if you talk to them, then you're cooperating, right? And there's no half cooperating. And you either give them the cold shoulder 100%, or you tell them everything. There's no in between." And I told him, and I told him, "Well, what do you think I should do?" And he asked me, he's like, "Well, why don't you go into your emails and find out what kind of evidence they have against you," right? And I went into my emails, and it turned out that there was a lot of evidence. We had, at first we were like, "Oh, we're not writing anything in emails," and we were pretty good about that. But then we were like on big time crunches, and there was everyone was on a different time zone, so we were really low on sleep. And eventually somebody sent an email, and we were like, "Okay, it's already an email," and like Ralph, our investor, sent an email to us with its step-by-step instructions of how to sand Chinese markings off crates, like with pictures of like how to do it. He had tried it out himself. And I don't know why he used actual Chinese markings on crates to try to sand, like use the sander to try to get rid of it from the crate. So there was very obvious emails, very obvious evidence for us. And so my lawyer said, well, in this case, I mean, you have to plead guilty because the evidence is rock solid against you. So I talked to the agents and I told them what I knew. And they told me that, we had, while we were doing the raid on the office, we found a to-do list on Ephraim's desk with a bunch of things to do in his handwriting. And one of the items on the to-do list was repackage Chinese ammo. So we knew about the Chinese ammo, but it's a good thing you told us, because if you lie to us, you get zero credit for cooperating. So you're going to go down even harder. And they're like, and actually we're not really going for you. You haven't made any money from this. You haven't been working at the company for like 2 months. So since you're cooperating, we're going to do our best not to charge you with anything. We're really just going for Ephraim. And I'm like, great, because I can't afford a lawyer now. I'm dead broke. And because Ephraim hadn't paid me and I'd been living off my savings this whole time, while waiting to get paid. And so then about like 6 months passed and nothing happened. And so I thought, well, maybe they're not even going to do anything about this and Ephraim kept on delivering, right? He didn't like stop delivering this ammunition. He kept on delivering 4 aircraft loads a week into Afghanistan. And about 6 months later, in March of 2008, the New York Times publishes a front page article about us with both of our mugshots on the front page. And they claimed that we were delivering rusty ammunition, low quality stuff that was defective, which was not true. We were delivering, the Army was very satisfied with the quality of the ammunition. There was like one shipment of about 30,000 rounds that they had rejected because there was rust on the ammo. But we didn't get paid for it. And they had put that shipment to like the side of the airport and let it because they weren't going to ship it back, and there was no ammunition recycling facilities in Afghanistan, so they just put it to the side of the airport. And when the New York Times sent a reporter to go investigate, someone pointed him, oh yeah, that's some of the ammunition that AEY delivered, and so that's the ammunition he took pictures of and ended up on the front page of the New York Times, even though it was like a tiny fraction of a percent of what we had actually delivered. So the way the New York Times portrayed it was that we were delivering rusty, low-quality, defective ammunition and putting our Afghan allies in danger. And so it became this big political scandal. And 2 days after that, then the Army put out a statement. We had no idea this was going on, and they canceled the contract. And then about a week after that, the Justice Department called me up, and they're like, hey, or they called my lawyer up, and they told him, and they're like, hey, we weren't planning on charging David with anything, but we feel like he was just too involved in the operation for us to reasonably charge Ephraim and not charge him. So we're very sorry, but we're going to have to charge him. And so what they did was they said to me, they're like, look, you were involved in this operation and you delivered 71 aircraft loads of this Chinese origin ammunition. And in each aircraft load, you provided a document. It was called a certificate of conformance. And on the certificate of conformance, it said the type of ammunition, the quantity of ammunition, the year it was manufactured, and the place of origin. And you put the place of origin Albania, but you knew that it was really China. And not only did you know it was China, you had a whole operation to repackage it and hide that it was from China. So this submission of this document with knowingly false information is an act of fraud. And you did this 71 times for each of the aircraft. So that's 71 counts of fraud, and you can get up to 5 years in prison for each one. So you're looking at 355 years in prison, unless you plead guilty. If you plead guilty, as prosecutors, we have the power to combine those 71 acts into one. So the most you're going to do is 5 years. And because you plead guilty, we'll tell the judge, hey, you know, he's a reformed citizen, going to be a good boy from now on. And we're going to recommend to the judge to give you on the low end of the guidelines. So you can get maybe 1 year, maybe just probation, up to the judge, not up to us. But we'll tell the judge to go as easy as possible on you. So that was my choice. I'm like looking at 355 years or maybe 1 year, maybe nothing. And of course, I didn't have the money to pay for a lawyer at the time, so I didn't really have an option to even fight him in court, even if that was a good idea, which it wasn't. So I pled guilty, and Ephraim eventually pled guilty as well. He tried to fight him for a little while too, but realized that the evidence was really strong against him, decided to plead guilty. Ralph, our investor, decided to fight them in court, took it all the way, and went through trial twice, actually, because the first trial was a hung jury. And that entire process took 3 years for them to go through the 2 trials. And they didn't want to sentence us until that trial was over because they wanted to use the sentencing as leverage against us to make us testify at Ralph's trial, if needed. So we didn't get sentenced for 3 years. Eventually, and during this time, you know, we were out on bond, so we weren't allowed to leave like the Southern District of Florida. They told us, you know, you can't be in the arms business. So my lawyer told me, okay, you're gonna have to do everything you can to look as good as possible to the judge. So go back to school, get a job at a nonprofit, do everything to make yourself look good. And so that's what I did. I got a job at a food bank. I went back to school. I decided to switch my major to mechanical engineering. Went back to doing massages because I had to make money. I couldn't be in the arms business and the government contracting business. And eventually I got sentenced to 7 months of house arrest. So I didn't even do any prison time. So I feel very, very lucky. Ephraim, on the other hand, had a much higher tolerance for risk. So he decided to continue doing the arms business under someone else's name. So he got like his latest lackey, after I quit, he replaced me with someone else. He ended up screwing that guy too, replaced that guy. So a few guys later, and that's just what he does. A few guys later, he had this guy set up a company under his own name, and he was doing business through that guy's company. Now that guy was, talking on the phone. Ephraim's like a real control freak. So when his lackey was doing negotiations, he would grab the phone and start, he's like, oh, I'm one of the investors, and he'd start doing the negotiations himself. So the guy he was trying to do business with, this gun dealer in like Central Florida, realized who he was, and he saw in the newspapers that he had pled guilty, and he figured, hey, maybe this guy's trying to entrap me into doing something illegal to get some time off his own sentence. And so he's like, I'm not going to fall for that. So he calls up the ATF and tells them, hey, I've got this convicted gun dealer trying to do this deal with me. What should I do? And the ATF is like, oh, that's really interesting. Why don't you have one of our undercover agents introduce him to Ephraim as your business partner? So this guy introduces the undercover ATF agent to Ephraim. And the undercover ATF agent tells Ephraim, he's like, listen, I'm the kind of guy that needs to look you in the eye and shake your hand in order to do a deal, knowing that Ephraim can't leave the Southern District of Florida, and he's in Central Florida, so he would have to violate his bond to go meet him. And so Ephraim's like, yeah, I'm the same way. This is how real men do business, He's like, I'll tell you what, I'll be up there on this coming weekend. And he drives up to meet the undercover ATF agent. Undercover ATF agent knows that it's illegal for a convicted felon, which Ephraim was at the time because he had already pled guilty, to be in possession of a firearm, to be holding a firearm, right? And it's also illegal for the agent to hand him a firearm. So what does he do? Pops open the trunk, and he's like, hey, Ephraim, check out that gun over there. It's the latest handgun on the market. It's the coolest thing, blah, blah, blah. And he knows Ephraim's a gun nut. Ephraim is like, oh, I heard about that thing. I've always wanted to check it out. He reaches into the trunk, picks up the gun. He's like, what can I say? Once a gun runner, always a gun runner. Am I right? And the agent slaps cuffs on him. He's like, you're a felon in possession of a firearm. And
so just holding it?
Just holding it. You can get up to 10 years in prison for that.
Damn.
That's a convicted felon. So Ephraim had already pled guilty for the fraud charge, which they had reduced it to 1 count as well. So he could get up to 5 years for that. And then he could get 10 years for the gun charge. So he could have gotten a total of 15 years. But he hired the best lawyers in Miami, spent millions of dollars on them, and eventually negotiated it down to 4 years. So he ended up doing, I think he ended up doing 3.5 years in prison because he got like some time off for doing like a drug rehab program.